Hi folks, welcome to your latest MWIS Outlook, this updated on Tuesday the 12th of January. Hope you're managing to make the best of some local walks at the moment. There's some interesting weather going on over this week, a real battleground of air masses taking place across Britain. We've got some cold air in place at the moment lying to our northeast and some milder air trying to come in from the southwest, and in between we've got a front, and that's likely to produce some extensive snowfalls through the middle of this week, some freezing rain mixed in for good measure, and then cycles of freeze and thaw will take us through to the weekend, but indications going further forwards suggest that colder patterns will prevail. Now we'll dive straight in with the synoptic chart. This is the situation for Wednesday. We've got a warm front moving in from the southwest very slowly. The cold air lies to the northeast and the milder air coming in behind that warm front. A general transition to milder air, and some of that less cold air is already starting to override some of the colder air at the surface. So that's one of the things that will create the risk of some freezing rain, and we'll look at a vertical sounding on that in a moment. Where the air is still generally cold enough, that front, as it moves into the cold air, will produce snowfall, and that really focusing itself across the Scottish Highlands into northern England as well for a time, before more turning to rain from the west, and that transition to rain having already taken place across Wales from the word go. Further north and northeast across the Highlands, chances are you're in for a dry day before some snow turns up around the Cairngorms later on. Bit of weather learning for you then here. This is the vertical forecast sounding for the middle of the day on Wednesday across northern England, and just to try and highlight the situation for some freezing rain coming in. That's the situation where raindrops fall to the surface but pretty much freeze on impact, creating very icy conditions. So what's going on? This then shows you the temperature and dew point with height. The temperature is the red line, the two lines pretty much close together, indicating a rather saturated atmosphere with cloud and precipitation in the forecast. The 0 Celsius isotherm going up the chart is around here. And just notice that around the level above, say, 4,000 feet, 1,200 metres or so, we've got temperatures which fall away well below freezing at that level. Just below that, we've got a zone where the temperatures are just above freezing point, and then further lower down, right to the surface level, the temperature is back at or just below freezing. And that subtle threshold is just enough to melt some of the snow that falls through the higher atmosphere, turn it into raindrops around a layer just above the surface, and then with the surface air still being distinctly cold at or just below freezing point, that just gives that chance for those raindrops to freeze. They don't quite get the chance to turn back to snow. They make it all the way through to the ground, but with the surface layer being practically at freezing point, that ice then just forms. Quite a complicated process, and it will be variable from place to place and valley to valley, just depending on how the situation of the air is moved about as the front starts to move through. This chart is the freezing level, and a slightly different one to what we sometimes show you. A few more pretty colours on it, and it's trying to resolve a little bit more detail. This is first thing on Wednesday morning, and the interesting thing to note here is that this is seeing the freezing level sort of higher up, if you like, in the atmosphere. It's not necessarily taking into consideration that scope for sub-zero conditions lower down. So although this is at dawn on Wednesday, you'd think the milder air had already come well into central Scotland and northern England. I think this is the point where that awkward mix is going to take place between snow and freezing rain lower down, but it just highlights that that warmer air is already overriding, coming in from the Atlantic from the southwest, the colder air lying underneath it for a time at least. Now I'll just roll this on over a day or so and we'll just see where this goes. You can see how there's quite a marked contrast between that very cold air which lies to the northeast and the milder air coming in from the southwest. The scale is on the bottom of the chart if you're trying to work out where the freezing level is, all in metres, so you're getting way up above the mountain summits, temperatures going up to 3 to 5 degrees, say on Snowdon Summit by the time we get through into Wednesday daytime and onwards into Wednesday afternoon, those milder temperatures get in, I suspect, across the Lake District and southwest Scotland. So summit temperatures likely to rise above freezing, so any early snow turning to sleet and rain increasingly, but the colder air still hanging on across northeast Scotland, and the scope for actually temperatures to be near a freezing point lower down. Now this takes us just onwards into Wednesday evening and night, and what is of interest with this is that colder air tries to tuck back in from the east, and it's the same front that more or less is going to be around and just grinding to a halt as we go into Thursday daytime, but it does have the potential to lower the freezing level markedly again across Scotland and northern England. There's a lot of uncertainty where this lies, but where the precipitation tries to set in again, it could well be that it chills the air enough to bring things back to snow extensively across central, eastern, southern Scotland and northern England. That's really one to be watching carefully for Thursday daytime. It may well be that those temperature values do come back down sharply enough to turn it all back to snow. A very complicated time then in the next day or so. That's what we look like by Thursday. A little centre of low pressure tries to form somewhere over central England. There's the front that is across more northern and eastern parts of England and eastern Scotland. And it's that which just tries to wriggle its way back westwards in some respect, so I suspect it gets stuck somewhere around the eastern half of the Highlands, the Cheviots and the North Pennines in terms of where the greatest risk of some snow is for Thursday. Further west across the Highlands, still relatively less cold air and some showers with a mix of snow on the high tops and some rain at lower levels in western Scotland. A murky, chilly, damp day, I think, is the best picture you're going to get across Wales and the South Pennines here. The temperature's still, I would have thought, high enough to be mostly all rain. Now, by Friday, all those fronts have broken apart, and we've got a brief window of higher pressure, but could just leave a rather murky atmosphere in place. A lot of low clouds and fog banks at various levels, really, some of it into the valleys and the glens, some of it up on higher slopes, and limited breaks overall, I would have thought. A few residual patches of drizzle or snow flurries locally, but not doing a great deal. Light winds initially, but a strengthening south-southwesterly will try and push in from the west, so winds will strengthen across western Scotland, and the next front tries to make some inroads with some rain preceded by snow coming into the western side of the Highlands. Very uncertain by the time we get to the weekend. I won't dwell on this too much because it could really chop and change, but really I would suggest the idea of further areas of precipitation, a mix of rain, sleet and snow, and some freeze cycles, some thaw cycles on the hills, so all a little bit messy by this stage. Similar for Sunday, it looks as though things just try and go back westerly at least for a time, with some showeriness coming in to the western side of Scotland and the risk of brisk westerly winds. Not much more we can do with that at this stage. A very difficult one for getting the forecast modelling to have any sense to it at the moment. The trend further ahead, this is then going into the week from the 19th to 25th of January. The pressure anomalies, the average for the week as a whole, showing higher than average pressure, very much focused around Greenland and Iceland to our northwest, lower than average pressure across Scandinavia and Central Eastern Europe. And the scope from all of that is that much colder air gets drawn in across the British Isles from the northeast. Many forecast models are really starting to ramp up on that idea. So the prospect for significantly colder conditions to become established widely as we head onwards into the final third of January. We'll monitor that closely. Hopefully that's all been of use and interest for you today. Thanks for watching. As always, bye for now.